Mama said Dark Elves vs. Beastmen's gonna be the next DLC. Well, Mama's wrong again. But that doesn't mean they can't face off on Warhammer 2 multiplayer, where the ODM clan is letting off some in-house steam. Loopy commands the Dark Elves, Demand commands the Cloven Ones, and we've got a barn burn on our hands here, because this one gets close and hangs in the balance right up until the end. The Medusa is Lusa, in a battle with Shades, Minotaurs, Cygors, Morathi, and Malagor the Dark Omen. And from the killing grounds beneath their very feet, something wicked this way comes. Monsters, mortals, magic, and a lot of malicious moves. What more could we ask for on Warhammer 2? And we got the Beastmen coming out of the woodwork here. So, for the Druki, Mama Morathi on her Dark Pegasus Sulafet is leading the party. She'll be stacking Enchanting Beauty and Heartrender and the Dark Sword to lower the stats of anyone or anything that approaches. Doom and Darkness, Soul Stealer, and the Wand of those silly steampunk dwarfs from Age of Sigmar round out the rest of her build here, but Soul Stealer is always the main spell for her. Greater Arcane Conduit means you can cast that 4 or 5 times and almost always hit the healing cap while nuking blobs and characters. She is joined by the Bloodwrack Shrine, which has obvious synergy with the Aura of Agony and the Aura of Ardor. If they're fighting back-to-back, enemy units will be approaching 0-0 in terms of attack and defense, not to mention all the terror and leadership debuffs, so that is a tough nut to crack. It can blend through infantry super fast while debuffing everything in an AoE around it. But like all Medusas, she can also Sonic Blast you from range as well, killing 10 to 15 models a pop, then running over you in melee. Pretty good. They're joined by the Hellebronai, 4 Dark Riders, and 3 dual weapon Shades, which is interesting. That bonus versus infantry will help quite a bit if Gors manage to close the gap here, but it's generally the Centaurs, Chariots, and Warhounds that give the backline conniption, so we'll see how they're used, but it's definitely an interesting pick. Nothing too spicy outside that, but the loosey-goosey Medusa is hot enough to make this a pretty interesting build that we don't get to see too often. We don't get to see her too often. For the Beastmen, Bray Shaman of the Lore of Death is leading in charge with Spirit Leech, Horde of Gore and Ungor, and the Eye of Morslib Cygor, chucking amber boulders clear over the mountains like Uncle Rico. Gaze into the warp too long, and the warp gazes back. So watch out for that net on the way in, because it'll freeze aggression right in its tracks. In the rear comes Malagor the Crowfather, with Traderkin and Savage Dominion. Expect to see those Cygors summoned immediately to pound those Shades once they're discovered, but there's a lot to be said for hanging on to at least one of those once the Shrine or Morathi has fully committed to melee. A lot of good players use them more like a giant to get some guaranteed damage on high-value targets and to cause terror in the late game rather than just using them like artillery. In the back come everyone's favorite Monstrous infantry, that A1 Wagyu beef, the cream of the crop, the apple of our eyes, Minotaurs, and the Butchers of Kalkengard, looking to feast on some knife eaters this day, and we'll get it started with an Amber Boulder, definitely dodged, well played from the Dark Elves there. Don't want to let your Bleak Swords or Dread Spears get torn up on the way in if you can avoid it, but if you're the Beastmen here, I'm actually not sure a Cygor summon is worth it right at the start of this match. You've already got the Eye of Morslib to put pressure on the Dark Elves and force them in, and there's nothing really of value to shoot at right now except, I guess, the Hellebronai, but they're really not very expensive either. So if it's just Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, I kind of like the idea of waiting until the Bloodwrack Shrine gets closer, then summoning a Cyclops on top of it to beat her up in melee. Maybe alley-oop that with Warp Gaze so it can't run away, but I'm not sure you get a ton of value otherwise. And the Dark Riders got caught out. They ran right into an ambush, nicely played from the Sons of Goros, hanging out in the woods right there alongside some Poison Warhounds, and Dark Riders putting some pressure on the Beastmen left flank at the moment as well. What we'll see a lot of this battle is the strength of that Bloodwrack Shrine from downtown. Every time it fires, it will insta-jib about 12 to 15 models a pop, which is awesome. And Dark Rider play has been a little bit sloppy so far, caught out by the Bray Shaman on his Chariot and the Minotaurs. Dark Riders are way faster than both those entities, so don't want to let your light cav get torn up. Might not even be worth getting aggressive with them. Might want to just use them defensively to patrol your own back line and protect the investment in those Shades. And that's been a heavy investment from the Dark Elves here. He paid a little bit extra for that bonus versus infantry with the dual weapon variant. So gotta make sure they get some value shooting into those Cygors or getting rid of some of these high value threats like the Minotaurs especially. Butchers of Kalkengard or the Great Weapon Minotaurs, if they are slaughtered, That would be a fantastic use for those shades. And the Medusa letting Lusa with the sonic boom. I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna stop. I'm sorry, okay? I sometimes get carried away. But the Beastmen are feeling the wrath of that sonic boom for sure. Every time she screams, a lot of dead on the Beastmen side of things, and then she can go right into melee, cause terror. But the Butchers of Kalkengard doing a great job on the left flank, and again catching out some Dark Riders who were forgotten about. So yeah, definitely some sloppy light cav micro at the start of this match, but it can be easy to forget about them because they're not expensive and they're really fast. So if you don't put them in the right spot, they'll die real quick. And that's actually not the only mistake going on right now. Shades are a bit blobbed up in range of the Ungor archers and are looking like a juicy target for the Cygors and their boulders. Both Savage Dominion summons have already been used. I don't agree with that either, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Because Morathi has unleashed a glorious Soul Stealer on the Bray Shaman, and the Beastmen left. And that will suck them dry in a way only 8,000 years of experience could. Really nice cast. Bow to your queen. That should get her right back to full HP, while the Bray Shaman gets smacked by the Wand of the Kharadron Overlord. Bringing the pain with the Bounce Spell Doom Bolt, dealing about 700 damage there, which is okay. About what you'd get from a Spirit Leech, and there's no Bestigors or expensive Cav to nuke. But the Shades have been left undefended, and there will be no Dawn for the Atari. This is why I recommend always leaving 1 or 2 Cav units in reserve. Not that a single Dark Rider could stop this madness by themselves, but they could slow them down a bit and give the Bloodwrack Shrine or Morathi more time to make their way back here and ward off all these hunters. It's getting ugly for the Shades, Sons of Goros, and the Poison Warhounds diving into the rear, and there will be no escape for some really expensive archers with a lot of AP. That would be an incredibly useful tool for killing the Minotaurs off quickly, or the Cygors off quickly. Nasty shot coming in from the Bloodwrack Shrine, though, and the Bray Shaman is having a grand old time back here until Morathi finds her way towards a duel. That will not go well for the Bray Shaman if he's caught isolated like this. Might want to start retreating back to the main line, but doing a great job killing the Shades for right now, so Beastmen might be content to keep him going. Medusa's already up to 85 kills. Another nice Soul Stealer from Morathi. Those have been on point all game long so far. It's her second cast, and yes, indeed, she is going for the duel with the Bray Shaman, who might not be able to escape too easily. Sons of Goros with a chef's kiss, exquisite rear charge into the Dread Spears should finish them off for good. And the Minotaurs are in and amongst the infantry and having a grand old time there as well. Now, there are multiple schools of thought when it comes to Savage Dominion. Should I use them like a giant? Should I use them for their artillery capabilities? Generally speaking, I would say it's better to use them in melee when there aren't a lot of good infantry or cavalry-sized targets, when your opponent hasn't invested a lot in the infantry grind. So I think summoning both Cygors immediately and just using them for their boulders was perhaps a bit wasteful when all you're killing is Bleak Swords. Having a late game summon to beat up on the Shrine to help protect Malagor could have potentially been a game changer, but it's no longer an option. Minotaurs don't mind though. It just means they get more wood to chop to drive the fires of their cannibalistic rage, and they are gouging and goring everything that gets in their way, and they made it into contact with the remnants of the Satari, the remnants of these Shades, and it's gonna get ugly for them real quick. Bloodwrack Shrine might be able to cause some problems for them attacking into the rear, but the Butchers of Kalkengard are healthy at the moment, running through any infantry that gets tossed their way, and they're a problem if you're the Dark Elves. Morathi and the Bloodwrack Shrine might have to fight back to back to have any hope of bringing those bad boys low. Another one coming down, hitting the Bray Shaman again, dealing about 700 damage. That's on top of the Soul Stealer. One more attack from Morathi might be able to push him to the routing threshold. He just barely escaped out of what was a pretty nightmare situation. And the Minotaurs with great weapons are not long for this world either. A Dark Rider charge just shattered them completely with the help from Heartrender and the Dark Sword. Eye of Morslib and the Helabroni going at it. Eye of Morslib should be okay. It has some support from the Ungor archers. And I don't think the Helabroni are immune to Psych, so terror might be imminent once they've taken a little bit more damage. Gors are coming in to support, so either way, that Cygor should be completely fine, even though Helabroni are bonus for Slarge. And a great engagement from Loopy and the Dark Elves, full surround off on the Butchers of Kalkengard. Dark Riders terror routed immediately, but I think the Butchers will rout soon after. They may return, but they won't have a lot of models left, and that's a huge loss for the Beastmen there. I think that was a situation where maybe you bring them back and tie them up alongside the Eye of Morslib, and you've got a really strong core. Sending them out by themselves without any support might have been a bit of a disastrous play, but the Dark Riders are being run down. Sons of Goros and the Poison Warhounds are still a problem for the Dark Elves back line. I'm putting that in air quotations, which you can't see, because there really is no back line at this point. There's just some routed infantry, but the Beastmen can run all those down, and it's one of the things they're best at doing. Meanwhile, the Bloodwrack Shrine still has ammunition, and it'll fire that ammunition while cruising down the street in its 6th foe, jocking the biddies, slapping the hose, and here it comes. Closing the gap now. Once it makes it there, Terror Routed City for the Beastmen, but it'll get a couple more shots in before it even does so, and a bunch of dead Beastmen for sure. Yeah, that looks really painful. This is where the Bloodwrack Shrine can really shine. Another Soul Stealer coming out of Mama Morathi. Sons of Goros destroyed, shattered by that spell. Chaos Warhounds with Poison following shortly behind. And now the Eye of Morslib is left undefended, and the Dark Elves are swarming on top of this extremely important single entity monster. Question is, can they bring it down? In the background, we can see that the Butchers of Kalkengard have returned. Malagor the Dark Omen has been hanging out in the back of the map in relative safety. My god, he would love to have a Cygor summon right now. This would be the perfect opportunity. You cast a Warp Gaze, you summon the Cygor, and then let it go to town with that 50 melee attack, which would be reduced somewhat by the Aura of Agony. Traitorkin popped on Morathi will make it more difficult for her to disengage. Now the Ungor Spears are behind, and she doesn't have anywhere to go with the changes to mass. There's no way she'll be able to pull through an entire unit, an entire angry horde of Ungor Spearmen. And with Malagor the Dark Omen closing the gap as well, things are starting to get quite ugly for Mama Morathi. But now, look at the stats of everything around both of them. Around that Medusa and around Morathi, 36-14 for the Eye of Morslib. That's more like a peasant stat line than what you'd expect from a Cygor, and yet still he lands an attack, and Morathi drops down to 80 HP. She will be able to escape from this scenario, and she has not shattered somehow, but she is super close to the healing cap, and I don't believe she will have enough Winds of Magic to cast any more Soul Stealers anyway. She had to cast Doom and Darkness on the Ungors, which did not break them in time, but almost did. It was a good idea to give her a chance to escape, and hell, it might be the reason she's still alive and hasn't shattered. Butchers of Kalkengard with 1,000 HP left, only 2 models remaining. That means each of them have 500 health, so those 2 Minotaurs could be a problem. Malagor the Dark Omen surrounded by Bleak Swords, which he's not a great combat lord, so I'll be curious to see how that goes. And this should also be interesting. Obviously, the Bloodwrack Shrine would love to chase the Eye of Morslib all the way to the edges of the map. Dark Runners tried to get a Hammer and Anvil off, but they terror routed immediately when they got close. And now it's up to the Bloodwrack Shrine to try to kill off Monstrous infantry, which is not what she is good at doing. 24 melee attack, 28 melee defense. Not an amazing stat line for dueling Monstrous infantry, and the bonus for infantry will obviously be wasted there too. Morathi, 80 health, returning to the fold. Balance more well in the favor of the Beastmen right now, but this game is very much up in the air. Nice rear attack, only 500 health left on the Butchers of Kalkengard. They're sending in everything to try to finish off Malagor the Dark Omen and these Minotaurs. Even Ungor Herd getting stuck in now. Mass wavering on both sides. Morathi just broke again, and that Cygor, it's the Undertaker meme. He's returned. He's awoken from the dead, and now he should be able to outduel the Bloodwrack Shrine that only has 380 health left. Morathi won't offer anything more this battle. She can't. Anytime she gets close, she will rout before she even enters melee combat. Bloodwrack Shrine is heroic at the moment. Down to 100 health. Everything is wavering on both sides. Balance bar is almost dead even now. Oh my god, Morathi returned and stabilized. No way. And she strikes the killing blow. The Eye of Morslib is down for the count. That leaves Malagor the Dark Omen by himself to fight. A Bloodwrack Shrine with 100 health left, Morathi with 80 health left, and Blake Swords with about 1,000 HP left. And those are the only units remaining. 240 HP left on Malagor the Dark Omen. Some Ungor Spears coming in, but that's it. The head is cloven from the Dark Omen, and the cloven ones no longer have a leader. And without its head, the body dies. Wow. Very impressive and exciting battle from ODM. Really fun to watch, and a lot to talk about here. So, Bloodwrack Shrine, almost 3,000 damage value, 16,000 damage dealt. It's one of those units that you only see in particular matchups, maybe against the Vampire counts, maybe against the Beastmen, against factions that don't have reliable ways to shoot it down from long range, I would say, is typically when you're going to see it. You can see it against Chaos as well, for sure. But yeah, it was a beast, this game. The Shades, not so much. The Shades were not well protected. Morathi got 3,300 damage value herself, so impressive from her and the Bloodwrack Shrine, which is pretty lore-friendly. She uses them whenever she can. Cygor, almost 3,000. The Eye of Morslib, almost 3,000 damage value. Sons of Goros did well with 100 kills. And Malagor the Dark Omen. But yeah, a lot to talk about here. So the Dark Riders, I think, were one of the biggest issues the Dark Elves had this game. You got aggressive with them, and the aggression did not pay off at all. There were definitely some sloppy micro mistakes on that front. Lost a lot of his light cav for free, and more importantly, did not protect his Shades and allow them to shoot into the Monstrous infantry. This could have been a relatively simple victory, I think, if the Dark Riders had supported the back line more appropriately and given those Shades more time to fire in. With that said, the Shrine and Morathi were microed very well, used their spells well, used their projectiles well, and they made a huge impact and carried the Dark Elves to a victory in this one. I think if the Beastmen held on to a Cygor summon in the late game and alley-ooped it with the Warp Gaze, they could have taken that Shrine down. That would have been a huge swing on the balance of power, and it would have given them a very good shot to take this battle. So a couple mistakes on both sides, but very entertaining from both players. Thank you very much for sending it in. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did, and I'll see you all in the next one.